So you want to go electric, but you have to go big. Maybe you've got a big family, or you just love the idea of having lots of space inside your car. This is the 2023 Kia EV9. It's fully electric, but it's got 3 rows of space inside, room for 7, and absolutely acres of space. So, does this car make sense? It is, in effect, a very expensive large family car when you compare it to other internal combustion options, but still, is it worth considering? There's a lot of cool stuff going on with this car and a lot of things that you need to know about. So let's get stuck into the review. The 2024 Kia EV9 comes in 3 different specification levels, and we've got the entry-level Air in this review. It's priced from $97,000 plus on-road costs, which sits at below Earth, which is $106,500, and the top spec GT line, which is $121,000 before on-road costs. So while there is an Earth spec EV9, unfortunately for those fans of old school funk music, there is no wind or fire spec. Standard equipment here includes twin 12.3-inch infotainment displays, fake leather seats with heating and ventilation up front, 3-zone climate control, an 8-speaker sound system, wireless phone charging, and interior LED lighting. There's also a heated steering wheel and electric tailgate. On the outside, there's LED projector headlights, 19-inch alloy wheels, rain-sensing wipers, power folding mirrors, and retracting door handles. Air is the only rear-wheel drive variant in the range, with a single electric motor making 160 kilowatts and 350 newton meters. For reference, Earth and GT line get all-wheel drive and twin motors with 283 kilowatts and 700 newton meters, along with a larger battery at 99.8 kilowatt hours. Our battery size here is smaller at 76.1 kilowatt hours, but a more efficient single-motor drivetrain means the claimed driving range is still decent with the Air, at 443 kilometers claimed on the WLTP cycle. All EV9s run on a more expensive 800-volt electric architecture, which allows for 350 kilowatt fast charging capability. That means the EV9 Air can go from 10 to 80% in as little as 15 minutes on an ultra-fast charger, according to Kia's claims. Charging at 50 kilowatts will take a bit longer, around 2 hours, while a home wall box is more of an overnight affair at almost 8 hours. It's always hard to get your mind around how big an electric car is sometimes, but I think there's no denying that this is a genuine big rig. It's over 5 meters long, it's nearly 2 meters wide, and it's also almost 1.8 meters high overall. So yes, it's massive. The wheelbase is quite long, typical of a lot of electric cars, but in this spec we've only got rear-wheel drive. But one thing I do really like about the car is the look of it. It's gone boxy like so many other SUVs have recently, but they've gone with a bit of a modern twist. It's very minimalized and reductive overall. There's no grille, you've got these interesting headlights. This sort of design, you're going to see it a lot more on new Kias coming up. The Carnival is one, Picanto is another one. You're going to see this design language happening. But here with this EV9, it's very modern, and just driving it around, you are getting a fair amount of looks from people, probably wondering what the hell is that car on the road, because it looks quite modern. Now, it's not going to be the most efficient electric car in the world because it is so big and heavy, but surprisingly, it's actually got a decent drag efficient, which means how slippery it gets through the air. It's 0.28, and for comparison's sake, Nissan Z, that's actually 0.29. So when you're at the next barbecue with your mates, you can say, hey, this thing is actually slipperier than a classic sports car. Not a bad thing. The EV9 gets access to the Kia Connect app functionality, which allows for things like remote locking and unlocking, operating windows and lights, as well as checking the location and charging status of the car from your phone. You can even open and close the charging door, which is kind of cool. And while the EV9 is yet to get a crash rating from ANCAP, it does have a good array of standard safety equipment. There's things like autonomous emergency braking, blind spot warning and rear cross traffic alert, lane keep assistance and traffic sign recognition. On that last point, it's worth pointing out that the EV9 does get updated software in this regard, which is improved for Australian roads and allows drivers to mute the warnings. There are 9 airbags inside, including curtain airbags for all 3 rows, as well as a front center airbag and seat-mounted side airbags for the first 2 rows. So here's the interior of the base spec EV9, and I actually had to recheck my notes and ensure that we got in the right car because it doesn't really feel like a base spec vehicle. I guess on the flip side, it's 97 grand, so you're not going to expect it to feel like an absolute economy option on the interior here, but there are a lot of nice touches going on and some cool design features, I think. This EV9 is pretty cool, but also practical. Let's run through that to start with. Two large cup holders here. They're a great size. You've got a wireless charging pad just behind there. And then further back again, a small center console storage area. So I've got a wallet and a pair of sunnies in there. You're not going to fit a whole lot more than that in there. Now, I will note that this plastic, it's a smooth plastic without any texture, and I'm a bit worried about how it's going to stand up over the long term. It seems to be a little bit scratch prone. Even if you just get a nail on there and scratch it, the marks do come up fairly quickly. So high trafficked area, that might be the new kind of piano black maybe, and just look a bit secondhand after a while, but I guess we'll see as this car spends a little bit more time on the road how it stands up. If you want to fit bigger stuff, that is further down the front here. Nice big open storage bin. It's massive. You can fit handbags and all that sort of bulky stuff in there. Now in front of the passenger, there's no storage shelf or anything like that. Just your regular old glove box there. A little bit of room to put some gear in there. But otherwise, storage is really well done. But I also like the fact that this EV9 looks nice in terms of having a simple interior, but having the right touches in terms of everyday usage. So nice open dashboard here. There are some buttons for getting through your navigation setup as well. But then you've actually got physical air conditioning controls. Hallelujah. Modes to push where the air is going, fan speed and temperature. So as you're driving, you can just fiddle with those and it's easy. You don't have to go through an infotainment display or anything like that. Hallelujah once again for a volume dial in the middle there. You can rip it up and rip it down, control your volume really easily when you're on the move. Your power outlets are located down the front here. You've got two USB-C points and also a pop-out 12 volt. You're seeing that in Hyundai and Kia vehicles at the moment, pretty much the exact same setup. And you can also switch one of these power outlets between a smartphone mirroring USB outlet and also just a good old-fashioned power one. So if you want to plug your phone in but not take over the infotainment, it is a nice touch. Speaking of, that's a really nice segue, infotainment. It's a big 12.3-inch infotainment display here. Now that's got a large digital instrument cluster as well. Once again, base vehicle, but it does have a fair amount of spec on offer. Big dual screen setup here, quite impressive to look at, and it's not typical for a base spec model, I guess. You are getting a bit of stuff for your money, over $100,000 by the time you're on the road. One interesting point to make here is that in between the two displays, you've actually got a small little digital cluster for air conditioning controls on top. You can press a button here to push even more complex controls onto the larger infotainment display, but you've got a little bit of extra stuff here for things like defrosting your windscreen, turning on and off your air conditioning auto mode, that sort of thing. When you're using it, I have noticed that the steering wheel tends to get in the way, so you're kind of craning your neck a little bit to use it. You don't need to use it all the time though, because you've got these nice manual controls down the front here. But anyway, that's enough about that. Digital cluster, that's the same as with a lot of other vehicles. It's a good trip computer. There's some great information to dig through on here. There's a little bit of customization to have as well in terms of what you want to see. It works well, and you've got a great readout in terms of how much battery you've got there and also what kind of range you have before you need to plug in. Very important stuff for electric cars. And if you're wondering where your gear shifter is, that is down here. Similar to Hyundai's, this Kia EV9 has a big stalk off the side of the steering column, and that turns the car on, but also gives you park, neutral, reverse, and all of those things. Works quite well, and it clears up space in the middle here for storage, which I think is a really good function. It's almost like the return of the column shift from back in the 60s or 70s. I think it's a great thing. Now, the thing that threw me about this Air spec was actually the fact that it's got heated and vented front seats. No memory, but it does have a heated steering wheel as well. So you do feel like you're getting a good car for the money, I suppose. The steering wheel feels nice. Drive mode on the steering wheel, I haven't seen that before. Interesting point, but the materials all feel good as well. These seats are nice. They're a faux leather. You've got some different colors going on. They're perforated. Check out the headrests as well. They're like a mesh material. Remind me of the old mesh Recaros from back in the day as well, but they're comfortable, quite soft actually. Just a different design feature, I suppose, which I don't mind. And also this headlining, it's like a clothy material. That reminds me of Hyundai Santa Fe from maybe a generation ago, having that nice material. I do like the look of it, the feel. It just works well for this kind of interior, I think. But overall, this is a nice car. It's got to be, right? The asking price is extremely high, so it's got to deliver, and I think they've done a good job. It feels modern, but it's also practical, which is really, really important. Let's have a look at the second row of this EV9, because it's a really important part of why this car might make sense for Australian families. But before I jump in there and show you how much space there is, check out the door handles. They're nice and flush, good for aerodynamics. Press the unlock button and out they pop. They work pretty nicely as well, but I've got to say, don't leave the car unlocked, because that kind of broadcasts to everyone that the car is in fact unlocked. So definitely don't leave this car unlocked if you don't trust where it is. All right, let's jump in. Massive door, it swings a long way, so it comes a long way out of the car, but it does give you good access in. But let's hop in now. All right, I'm piggy in the middle in the second row here. I've got a baby seat with ISOFIX tether points used on each side, and as you can see, I can actually fit quite comfortably into the middle here. I reckon if you had 3 baby seats, even if you had 1, potentially even 2 big bassinet style capsules, you would actually be able to fit them in here as well. There's a good amount of space in terms of width, but also leg room as well. It's a really good thing. And also there's another cool trick here, which isn't perfect for the Australian market, but it's very handy to have. On this driver's side here, you do have a cool function that actually flips the seat forward, similar to what you get in a Nissan Pathfinder, which means you can get to that third row without having to undo and remove the baby seat. Really handy feature if you're going to have these things permanently installed all the time, but you do need access to that third row quite regularly. But anyway, let's take these out and see what it looks like with a human in the back. Baby seats are out and I am in, and now I can show you a bit of a better idea of how big this EV9 is in the second row. Firstly, as we always do, legroom. That's my driving position up front there. I'm a little bit under 6 foot tall, but look at that amount of space we've got. We've got mountains of legroom there. Headroom, you've got a lot as well. I nearly used a bad word there actually, because there's a lot of headroom and there's a lot of legroom. So you can slide this forward. We do have tilt and slide on this second row. We can move it a long way forward, and still we're comfortable in the back here. There's no issue. Once we get to that third row, it'll all make a little bit more sense as to why there's so much space up here. We've got 2 cup holders there. We've got USB-C power outlets, and we've got this massive storage space underneath as well. You might not realize, but stick your arm in and it just sort of keeps going. It's actually massive. You could probably lose things in there, but hey, it's handy to have. And also this little slot in the front is a handy pocket as well for sticking your phone in or something like that. We've got some extra cup holders here. Let's move this seat back a little in there, but we are missing cup holders on the doors, which maybe sounds like overkill, but I do like the cup holders that you get in a Hyundai Palisade or something like that on the side. But anyway, I think we are well serviced here in terms of storage. Absolutely, in terms of comfort. There's no air vents here, of course, no controls, because they're up the top. The vents are there, and also the controls are there as well. They can be controlled from up the front and turned off. But I also noticed if you are driving around with no one in the back with the aircon on, it will actually turn the air conditioning off if it senses there's nobody in the back to preserve energy. That's a cool little feature that this EV9 has. But otherwise, there's good visibility, there's good comfort, and most importantly, bucket loads of space. Alrighty, here's the third row of the EV9. I'm in and I'm pretty comfortable. Just for reference here, this second row has been set up by Lucas, the camera guy. He is taller than I am, a little bit over 6 foot for those counting at home. He's got enough legroom left over to be plenty comfortable. And in the third row, so do I. This actually looks and feels pretty good. There's a little bit of leftover legroom there. My feet are flat on the ground. The seat is comfortable. I can actually tilt it a little bit further back as well, depending on how much luggage is in the boot there. I'll get to how much space is there a little bit later on, but I've got to say, this is pretty good. This is a genuine third row, as good as a Palisade, maybe even better. Kia Carnival, I don't know. Kia Carnival is still a bit of a god in my eyes, but this is definitely a proper 7-seat SUV. Although it is a little bit of a shame that Kia have not flipped the 60/40 setup for the Australian market. So if you're wanting to get in with a baby seat, that is going to have to be done on the driver's side, unfortunately. You can do it on the passenger side, but not with a baby seat. When the seats are free, it's actually not too bad. One touch, the seat moves forward, and you do get decent access into this third row. But once you are in, there are plenty of features which are great. Air vents right above your head here. There's one on the other side as well. That'll pump out a lot of cold air on those hot summery days. There's 3 cup holders in the back here, 1 on the passenger side and 2 on the driver's side. USB-C power outlets here. speakers, and even an extra little storage cubby there for something quite small, not terribly big. But for fitting people in here for longer periods of time or even just short runs around the block, this does work quite well. Now, another thing to note with this EV9, if you want a little bit of extra flexibility inside the car, or if you've had quintuplets, tip of the cap to you, but you've got actually 4 sets of ISOFIX points in this vehicle. You could literally fit 5 baby seats into the rear of this EV9. That is quite handy to have. Now, in my opinion, it's not much chop if you've got a 7-seater, but you lose all of your boot space in the process of having that third row. The good news here, as you can see, this is full 7-seat mode in the EV9 at the moment. I've even gone to the effort of putting these seats in their furthest back most position. You could actually move those a little bit further forward if you wanted to, but boot space is quite good still in this car. You've got a fair amount of width on offer here. It's a nice flat load space there. In here, you do have your emergency charger or your home trickle charger. You can choose to maybe stow that away somewhere else. I've actually got a good idea to put that somewhere in a minute, which I'll show you. But in terms of space, it is quite good overall. This would work even if you're using this third row all of the time. Underneath, you're not going to find any more storage space. And unfortunately, you're not going to find a spare wheel either, because you've got a luggage blind in here and a tire repair kit. So a goo kit for these big 19-inch wheels. Now, I would like to see a full-size spare in this car. Kia are historically really good at fitting full-size spares. Even a space saver would be nice, but I guess there is an issue with packaging with electric cars and big batteries and all of that sort of thing. So that is definitely one negative of this EV9. All right, now we're in 5-seat mode with the EV9. The third row is down and that second row has been pulled back so stuff doesn't fall down into those nooks and crannies to never be found again. But as you can see, the boot is massive. Now, before I wrap up this boot here, a couple more things to point out. On this side, I've got a 12-volt outlet plus a button to open and close this electric tailgate. And on the other side, a full-blown household power outlet there. So you've got your power needs covered quite nicely, and also some buttons to drop that second row. Press one button, down it goes. Press one button, down that goes as well. It actually folds nice and flat, and this is pretty much like a van now. No engine means no engine bay as well, and because this is the base rear-wheel drive model, we actually get some useful storage up front here in the Frunk. Hold down this button. There is also a button on the inside to open it up. There we go. Look at that. That's a nice big storage space in there, and like I said before, to get this thing out of the way in the boot, I would definitely shove it in here. But I think you can fit a lot of other stuff in here as well. I'm thinking maybe just groceries you don't want sliding around in the boot. They'll be a little bit more secure in here. It's nice and weather sealed with this big seal all the way around. There is a handy hook there and also even a little net in there for something that you don't want to lose. Now, one quick favor before we hit the road. If you are finding this content useful at all, let us know in the comments below and please give us a thumbs up while you're there. A large part of the driving experience in this EV9 is mostly unsurprising. Being fully electric, it's quiet and it's smooth and it's easy to drive for the most part. I want to make a bit of a point about how quiet it actually is. This vehicle, even up to highway speeds, is really nicely sound insulated. There's not a lot of road noise that gets through. Even noisy cars next to you don't seem to come through. This is quite a serene driving experience from the noise point of view. And obviously, electric power, there's no gearboxes, there's none of that going on, so it's smooth in terms of throttle response and all of that kind of thing. On that point, this is the base level model, so we're rear-wheel drive only and we're down on power and torque in comparison to the other EV9s in the range. But I've got to say, driving this, I've never really felt like it needs more power. This doesn't have that party trick of being genuinely fast, being able to surprise your passengers by pinning them back in the seat when you floor it. But at the same time, it's plenty quick enough, especially, I think if you think about 0 to 100, the first 50, this thing does quite well. It's the 50 after that, I suppose, that it feels a bit more regular, I suppose. There's still enough pace there for, let's say, 80 to 120 overtaking maneuvers or something like that. Taking off from the lights here, the throttle is fairly smooth and easygoing to start with. So you do need to punch it a little bit to take off, but there's plenty of power there. It's certainly quick enough, I think, for everyday usage. It's also worth noting that this EV9 is rear-wheel drive only, and I think it helps with power delivery. You're not spinning the front wheels like you do in large SUVs with big engines. I'm thinking of things like Toyota Kluger, Hyundai Santa Fe, Hyundai Palisade, those kinds of things. with a big V6, they spin the fronts quite easily. This can get off the mark with good composure and get up to speed nice and easily. Now, it's worth pointing out with this EV9 though, is that it's a large vehicle. It's over 5 meters long and the wheelbase is big as well, 3.1 meters in fact. Keep in mind, a dual cab ute, which isn't very good in terms of maneuverability, they can have a wheelbase of around 3.1, 3.2 meters. So this wheelbase isn't far off that mark. So the turning circle isn't fantastic. It's a wide vehicle as well, so you need to be on your game to get it nice and straight in the park. There isn't a whole lot of margin for error. So maybe this is more outer suburbs than inner suburbs, I think, as a family car. But still, once you get your head around it, it's not too bad. So it's a big car, but it's also a heavy car. And I've got to say the ride quality in the EV9 isn't perfect all the time. For the most part, it's good. And I think I've had such good experience with Kias in the past, having really nice balanced ride qualities. This one just, you can feel the weight a little bit at times. Some bumps are taken care of pretty well, but some just feel a little bit harsh and crashy. The sharper speed bumps and potholes around town, especially at lower speeds. Now we're riding on 19-inch alloy wheels at the moment. There are larger diameter wheels in higher specs, but in our launch review, I've only driven this EV9 by the way, apparently the higher spec models with larger wheels rode a little bit better. Now that goes against conventional thinking, but there you go. Maybe the detail is in the different kind of tires that they use in the different specs. But all in all, it's definitely not too bad. And I'm not nitpicking per se, but it's a smaller detail to note about an otherwise fine driving experience. Now the next big question, and probably the major question a lot of people will have, is efficiency. How efficient is this car? It's, at the end of the day, it's very, very large. So I've been driving around town, I've been driving on the highway, I've been doing a lot of testing in this vehicle, and I've had it down to as good as 15 kilowatt hours per 100 in suburban usage, driving as efficiently as possible. But around the highway, if you're driving for less efficiency, like right now, doing a bit of filming with this car, a lot of harsh acceleration, I'm reading 22 kilowatt hours per 100. And you'll do that on the highway as well, if you're loaded up and you're doing 110 k's an hour all of the time. So all in all, I would say an average to bank on would be around 17 or 18 kilowatt hours per 100. But just like every other car out there, it does depend heavily on your usage and driving style. So, does a big electric family car work in Australia? For my money, if I was putting up the dollars, I'd have to say, look at a Kia Carnival, because if you're not going to go off-road or do any of that kind of stuff, the Kia Carnival still really is the benchmark, I think, for a family car, for a big, big family. But in saying that, I've really enjoyed my time with this car, and I'm going to be a little bit sad to see it go because it's an interesting vehicle. It is fully electric, and there's a lot of cool design features going on the inside. The main strength for me about this car is absolutely the packaging and the size. Because it's fully electric, there's more room inside for occupants, and there's loads of space in the second row and third row. I just really wish that Kia, for our market at least, had slung that ease of access into the third row onto the curbside instead of being behind the driver here in Australia. But other than that, there are some really cool things going on. But of course, don't forget about the lack of a spare wheel. That could be an issue if you're looking to take this thing for a longer run in more remote areas. But other than that, and other than the price, of course, there is a lot to like about this car. It's modern and it feels modern. If it works for you as an electric family car in terms of the driving range, the recharge times, and all that sort of thing, I don't know, why not?